Arundhati Bhattacharya is chairman with the State Bank of India. Ma'am, thanks very much for coming back on the show. Prashant this side. What did you make of the outlook upgrade from Moody's, ma'am?
Well, I think I'm in sync with it. I've also been saying for a little while now that we are beginning to see things easing. The strains on the asset book is easing. We are also beginning to see more economic activity. Many of the issues that were holding up projects, they seem to be getting resolved one by one. There is much more openness and much more consultation going on. So overall, I think the situation on the ground, at least to us, is beginning to look better.
Would you expect a ratings upgrade anytime soon, or one should still wait for at least 2-3 years before that happens? Of course, it's up to the rating agencies, but as you see it on the ground, what's your opinion?
Yes, I think it has to be with the rating agencies, but let me tell you, I don't think it should be 3 years. 3 years is a pretty long-term horizon. If things happen as the government wishes it to happen, and then probably it should be sooner rather than later.
Okay, all right. Let's come to rates, ma'am. What prompted the rate cut, 15 basis points base rate cut? Of course, we all welcome it. But I just trying to understand. The ALCO met and took the decision. But if I go back to the press conference out of the Reserve Bank of India, and I heard that press conference, at least I got the impression that we aren't going to see a cut anytime soon. Maybe it'll come, the trajectory is down, but it's a timing issue, and a cut was not imminent. But then in the evening we saw the cut.
You see, I cannot say what happened with others, but I'll tell you what happened with us. From October itself, when we began to see that inflation was coming down, and our internal research also showed a very marked downward trajectory, we knew that with the inflation coming down, we would also be looking at an easing cycle and therefore rate cuts. Accordingly, from October, we started inching down our deposit rates. In March, or rather in the very last quarter, when the rate cuts of the repo came from the RBI, that time was really not conducive for rate cuts. In fact, it's the last month of the year for the banks. And as you know, in the last quarter, we wouldn't like to take chances because that is when you complete your results. And of course, there was stress on the books as well, for which we had to make lots of provisions. So given those, even when the rate cuts had come from the RBI, I had, and I think also on your channel, I had said that it will happen in the first quarter of next month. Now, we could have done it in the beginning of April itself, but I think, internal counsel prevailed that we should wait to see what the RBI's prognosis is and what the RBI has to say regarding the inflation and how they perceive it. So only after seeing RBI's projections, and there also, it was clearly showing, though they have taken quite a conservative position, but even they were showing it at below 6%. So we thought in that case, we should go ahead with the rate cut. And of course, the sooner the better. And therefore, we did it on the day of the monetary policy itself. We were, as I said, readying ourselves for it for quite some time. Didn't want to do it in the last quarter of the year, but it was slated for the first quarter of the year.
Fair enough, fair enough. Ma'am, the perception seems to be that the government plays a large, as the owner, plays a large role in deciding interest rates. Actually, I was watching a Hindi news channel the evening of the rate cut, and the headline read, RBI or Sarkar ki dant ke baad banks ne rate kata. Now, I'm just, for our viewers, would you care to explain how is there any dant and fatkar at all? Or there might be advice, but it's an independent. How does it work, the relationship?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't work like that at all. I think this is more of a media conjecture than reality. The governor of the Reserve Bank as well as the ministry, they very clearly have given the independence to the bank to take a call. All of them realize that the banks need to remain profitable and healthy for the economy to be equally healthy, and therefore there is no dart or fatkar, as you say. That's not the case at all. However, you know, we are also, as I said, quite responsible, and we know what needs to be done in order to ensure that the credit growth also picks up. We also need to do this so as to bring about better sentiment and confidence in the economy. So I think we are all playing our parts over here. We may be front loading the rate cuts a little, but that is acceptable. Maybe that is the reason we have not gone for the full 1 quarter, but instead have done a 15 basis points. But that doesn't mean this is the end of the rate cutting cycle. Rate cuts will happen depending upon how we see credit growth. If we can make up in volumes what we are losing in margins, then also we'll go ahead and cut further. But let me tell you, we are all interested in seeing that the economy begins to perform well, and we will try and play a responsible role in that.
Absolutely, no doubts about that. Ma'am, so what's your own projection about rates from here in the system? I mean, you are still the most competitive across the board. You've always been. What should, and others follow what you do? What's your own sense? It could, of course, it will depend on cost of funding, deposits as the major portion of it. That will depend on credit growth. So just add all of that up for us. How do you see things?
So, as I told you, adding all that up, I do see rates going down further. How soon I would request that people shouldn't get impatient, but it will happen. And as and when we see the numbers, how they are stacking up, how the credit growth is coming on, the only concern is first quarter of any calendar, of any financial year is always a period of low growth. But given the fact that last year was really bad, we are hoping the first quarter of this year will be an improvement. So if we see that improvement actually happening, and we are very hopeful it will, then definitely, you know, going forward, you will see further rate action from the banks.
What is your sense about how the economy is doing? Some of the high frequency numbers which are coming in. We got credit growth numbers for the industry for the fortnight ended March 20th, auto sales for the month of March. We got rural wage growth numbers for the month before, and of course a few other things. But are things picking up? And of course we'll get the quarterly numbers now, corporate earnings season just upon us. So we'll get a better idea. But what's the sense right now?
No, the sense is that this year has been a little better than the year before, and definitely the fourth quarter has been better than the first.
Okay, I think the link, we lost the link there. Should get it back in just a bit, and we'll continue with the conversation. So that's words from the top banker in the country, Arundhati Bhattacharya, chairman at State Bank of India. We should have that link back, and we'll continue this chat in a bit. The stock, by the way, has done a pretty big U-turn. It was up at start, it sold off, was down in the red, now up 0.75% as we speak with the chairman of the bank. 276 is where, 276 around is where the stock is trading at this point. Just hoping for that link to come back now. Just waiting for it. Bank Nifty on your screen, about 1.25% in the green. 18,647 is what you've got. That's about 233 odd points or so on the Bank Nifty at this point. Kotak Bank is up 3%. ING is up 3%. So I mean, actually, things are picking up. And we were talking about banks in particular in the morning as maybe one of the best plays of any big macro/economy type of news, and I'm referring to the Moody's outlook change. It's not that big a deal. Ratings, of course, are the real thing, but this one, if there is a play, it's got to be in the banking space. I'm talking from a market and investor trader kind of perspective there. They've all come back now. They've all in the green, and some of them are actually meaningfully higher, 1.5%, 1.6% higher as well. There's another report coming in from Moody's on banks. It's on your screen. It's downgraded rating for 3 private sector banks. They include HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank and Axis Bank. That's just as an aside. And rating downgrade from Baa3 versus Baa2. We'll put the reasons out and what they're seeing in this report, but this is separate from the outlook, the broader big report which came out in the morning at about 6 or so. Ms Arundhati Bhattacharya is back with us. Ma'am, we lost you there just as you were starting to respond to that question of mine on the economy. I trust you can hear me now. Please go on, ma'am.
Yes, I can. See, for the economy, as I said, you know, the fourth quarter is better than the first 3 quarters of last year. And we are hoping, because it's a low base, this first quarter of this year will also be better than that of last year. If you ask me on the ground, we are beginning to get a few project proposals. We are beginning to see the pickup in corporate activity, corporate interest. So overall, if you ask me, I am much more positive today than I was at the same time last year.
Okay, what kind of proposals in terms of scale and size? Which category of consumers, potential?
I had already told you. Sorry, you can complete the question, please.
No, that's it, ma'am. That's it. Sorry, please.
Yeah, regarding proposals, you know, we had already told you all, I think, told your viewers that we had received some proposals in the renewable space. We are also receiving some proposals in respect of things like pipelines, few proposals in the manufacturing space. So yes, it is picking up. Regarding the exact numbers, I don't have them with me right now. But as I said, you know, overall, I think the interest is picking up. We are also seeing quite a bit of interest in takeover of assets, whether they be producing assets or even stranded assets. So all of that also will result in activity. There are also triggers that have been there in the form of the coal auctions and the telecom auctions. So that money also will kick back into the economy. So I think, you know, if you consider all of these factors, I do see economic activity picking up.
When you say takeover of assets, ma'am, you're talking about M&A and banks funding that?
Not funding it, because as you know, we cannot fund domestic acquisition, but it will happen, you know, in respect of those corporates or those players who have money. They are willing to pick up assets which they believe at this point of time is at very good valuations.
And you mentioned 3 areas: pipelines, manufacturing, renewables, where you're getting proposals. Is that right? Pipelines, renewables, and broadly manufacturing.
Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, the RBI is now saying that if local banks guarantee corporates refinancing their loans by external borrowings, that has to be now shown as restructured assets, right? What is the impact? Is it large? Is it minuscule?
Yes. At this point of time, you know, it is not as though these proposals come on a daily basis or that we have a pipeline of such proposals. These proposals are taken every once in a while, especially in respect of those corporates that have large exports, in order to reduce their cost of borrowal. Because what happens is that if they have taken rupee loans in order to do capital spending, and then, you know, they have to service these rupee loans at the kind of interest rates that are prevailing in India, they become uncompetitive in the markets abroad where they are supplying. And therefore, you know, what was happening was that they were getting export performance bank guarantees based on the kind of track record that they have in exports, getting these discounted, and then thereby bringing down the cost of funds by repaying of the rupee term loans. RBI currently is saying that this is to be used for working capital and not for the term loans. We have to see, you know, if more such proposals come, then obviously we'll have to treat it as a restructuring. But at this point of time, we are not sitting on any such proposals.
Okay, fair enough. As far as working capital goes, ma'am, things are picking up. We also but seeing broad disinflation in the economy. Working capital loans have kind of been the silver lining for a lot of banks, and they're kind of steady, except of course retail and other segments. But are we going to see demand for working capital go down as well, as we see broad disinflation in the economy? Is that likely?
Working capital actually has gone down. That's one of the reasons why credit growth has been so tepid, because people with the same kind of working capital, they've been able to do much more. on account of the fact that the input costs have all come down. If you've seen the inflation, if you've seen the way the energy prices are moved, so you're able to do much more with the same amount of money. That's one of the reasons why working capital has come down. The other reason, of course, has been that the CP market has been much cheaper. So corporates with good ratings, they have been able to actually get into those markets rather than, you know, wait for the banking to get working capital from banks. So I think, you know, on the side of working capital, unless and until you see a lot of capacity utilization going up, you won't see any very major uptake on the working capital side.
Okay, one last question, ma'am. Fourth quarter earnings is upon us. You said that Q4 for the broader economy is looking better. What about banks and the earnings, ma'am? How are they going to look? Especially from an asset quality perspective. Does Q4 also have...
It's difficult for me to...
Yes.
No, we've already... No, it is not possible for me to comment on Q4 numbers. As you know, we are also closing our books. So at this point of time, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about the bank's Q4 numbers. But what I was saying is only on the basis of other indicators that have been coming in. For instance, we found that our home loans in February and March were above the numbers in February and March of the year before. So I am basing the Q4, whatever I have said on the Q4, on whatever we have seen on the ground in the bank's books itself. But regarding the earnings, etc., I don't really think I can comment on it right now.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I don't expect you to. But very broadly for banks, is Q4 also a period where assets which are at the margin, which you could categorize as restructured, but you waited on? I mean, is there a push to sort of, you know, push till the fourth quarter and then show them as restructured? So in that sense, at the margin, does asset quality pressures build up in fourth quarter? I mean, very broadly speaking. No, normally it doesn't build up in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, in fact, we see much more resolution than we see during the entire other 3 quarters. However, as you know, this time there was a closing of a window whereby restructured assets from the 1st of April were supposed to be classified as NPAs, and more provision was required for them. As a result, you know, there would have been a rush for restructuring in the last quarter of the earlier month, merely because this window was closing. So even those corporates which may not have needed restructuring immediately, people may have preempted that the closing of the window and restructured them in any case, just to take care of any eventuality that might crop up. So yes, probably restructured numbers will go up in this last month, not because there was a sudden spurt of difficulty in the economy, but merely because people would have been more cautious and they didn't want these accounts to be restructured in the next year on account of the classification difference. Ma'am, thanks very much for your time. Great talking with you. Appreciate it as always here on NDTV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break here. Before I do that, there's news coming in from Hyderabad.